There's a funny thing about mental retardation. It's generally not in short supply, and it often comes in pasty fat packages. Case and point.
So today we're going to talk about the Electoral College and why it should be abolished. But I need to preface this by saying, fuck Hillary Clinton. I hate her guts. I don't want her as my president. And the results of this election should stand despite what any whiny liberals protesting in the streets or signing online petitions have to say about it.
Forgive me if I apply a little bit of skepticism to your so-called objectivity on this issue, primarily because I've never heard you talk about the Electoral College until after this election.
But in the long run, I think the Electoral College is an antiquated thing and the reasons for its existence are obsolete. The Founding Fathers of America created the Electoral College to protect us from what they called the tyranny of the majority. Now, I don't think you need a giant breakdown of what that means, but boiled down to its essence, it's the belief that we need a fail-safe to keep the people from electing someone that the establishment doesn't want in office, because the voters are viewed as too stupid to really make the decision for themselves.
Your summation of the concept of the tyranny of the majority is along the lines of something that someone who is the product of severe uterary dysfunction would come up with. There is a lot more to it than that. Let us just get into the issue of the so-called redistribution of wealth. One person, one vote, which is what I assume you will be advocating for later in this video, is a very, very troubling concept if you're one productive farmer in a town of hundreds of people who may or may not be productive, and they decide that they want more of your shit at less than market value and decide to vote that shit for themselves or vote to elect somebody that would accomplish this.
But here you have Donald Trump, a guy who the establishment absolutely fucking despised, who won because of the Electoral College, not in spite of it. So, on that level, it's not really working.
You'll forgive my saying so, but this would rather seem an indication that the Electoral College does not do what you say it purported to do in your first point. Ergo, your first point was complete bullshit, and I just wasted a minute of my time listening to you.
Another concept behind the tyranny of the majority is that, the dairy farmer from Wisconsin or the factory worker from Ohio doesn't necessarily want the huge throngs of people from New York and LA drowning out his voice when they live lives totally different from his own.
The reason why said dairy farmer lives a different life from throngs of people living in a city is that unlike those throngs, he's actually producing something that is needed. Granted, I will state that there are people that work in the cities that do contribute things that have become necessities in more recent times. However, your average idiot living in a city who can vote is either homeless, works a menial job that could probably be accomplished by machines, and is not really contributing anything vital to the survival of humanity. Your dairy farmer is producing the milk that you may or may not be drinking. In your case, the milk that is producing the cheese on the cheeseburgers that you consume in mass quantities on a daily basis, you fat pig.
To which I say, that's what the Senate is for. That's what the House of Representatives is for. You need people in government to represent the interest of your region, and I understand that.
The Senate has not performed its constitutional function in about 100 years because of the 17th Amendment, so that point goes clear out the window. As far as the House of Representatives, well, I hate to break this to you, but the House of Representatives is one person, one vote, just in a district fashion. So, in essence, the House of Representatives reflects what you're trying to foist on the presidency. The presidency is actually a combination of what the Senate what used to be and what the House of Representatives has always been in combination with each other. One person, one vote, but at the state level. And the primary reason for doing this is not because the states control the presidency, but rather because the office of the presidency flows through several layers of governance. You do not want the people directly voting for the head of the government, primarily because of the actual ignorance of the masses. I have heard you state on several occasions that you think that the majority of the people living in this country are complete idiots. All of the sudden you've decided that, hey, the That's not really that important, but then again it is. The Founding Fathers had a legitimate point, but I don't fucking care because I want to be a douchebag and make a stupid video. Story of your life.
But when it comes to deciding who the president is, it should be one person, one vote. Because now we've created a situation where the people who live in the cities are getting crushed by country dwellers because country dwellers' votes just count for more.
Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. For the past 8 years, we've had a presidency that is entirely the product of the urban vote. The only reason why Hillary did not win the election is because so many people that actually are productive, that do live in cities and in more progressive suburban areas, have been screwed economically by this administration. Trust me when I tell you, most presidents, with maybe the exception of dishonest Abe, who was actually backed by big corporate backers that were situated in cities. The vast majority of people that have governed this country have been the product of cities. They have not been country bumpkins. Country bumpkins might get duped into voting for one of them, but trust me when I tell you, the cities are not getting crushed by country bumpkins. If you want a clearer example of this, come to Pennsylvania. This entire state is run from Philadelphia. Whenever we get a Republican governor, it is one that is always friendly to Philadelphia or oftentimes even originally from there. It is very rare that we get somebody even from Pittsburgh, which is the second biggest city in this state. We occasionally get senators from there. It is more the exception than the rule when you get somebody like Pat Toomey, who is not from either of those two major cities. Most of the states are run from the capitals or from the largest urban centers. People like me who live out in the sticks have very little power outside of our own locales. That's the way it's always been, and it's probably the way it's always going to be because everybody loves their democracy, whether it be the modified form that we have here or the more direct version that a lot of people like you wish we had whenever you lose a fucking election.
We need to stop looking at this in terms of which party is benefited and start asking ourselves, what is fair?
You don't believe in fairness, TJ. You want to know how I know that? Because fairness is a universal. It applies to every person at all times, everywhere, assuming it exists, which you don't believe it does. And you, as both an atheist and a materialist, don't believe in some sort of outside third-party authority that determines these things for everybody. You think that this is all determined by us. And given that you've already admitted that in America alone we have at least two divergent groups butting heads with each other over what fairness is, we're kind of at an impasse here. So you shouldn't be saying what is fair. You should be a little more honest and just say what is more fair for you.
The tyranny of the majority at this point in history is being exacerbated by giving rural people too disproportionate of a say.
Hey retard, why don't you read the census? Over 75% of people living in America live in cities. You cannot have a tyranny of the majority if a minority of people are what is under consideration as being the alleged tyrants.
You know what I think is fair when we're electing the person who gets to lead all of us? One person, one vote.
The majority of electoral votes are situated in the most heavily populated states, TJ. That's because the number of electoral votes is determined by how many congressmen or congressional districts are located in each state. Bumfuck nowhere, aka Wyoming, aka Nebraska, aka all of the other states that have the lowest populations, have the lowest number of electoral votes. The election turned out the way it did because states with sizable populations such as Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin went for Trump. This has fuck all to do with who lives in cities and who lives in the country, and everything to do with the fact that Hillary Clinton was a shit-ass candidate, and her slim lead in the popular vote was probably the result of illegal aliens with driver's licenses.
No one's vote should count for more than mine because they live in bumfuck nowhere. And guess what? No one's vote should count for less than mine because they live in bumfuck nowhere either.
Nobody's vote counts for less than anyone else's, TJ. You voted, other people voted, whoever carried the majority in your state won your state. If you switched it to a one-person, one-vote in a national context, the only thing that would change would be the way that candidates would campaign. Everybody would go to the major cities, such as Philadelphia, New York City, Los Angeles, and so on, and all the people in the middle of bumfuck nowhere would have even less of a reason to want to share a country with some smug piece of shit wannabe urbanite like you. If you're so upset about the fact that Bernie Sanders was not elected president, take it up with the fucking Democratic Party. Not my problem and not the Electoral College's fault.
We all have to coexist as a country, and so we should all have exactly equal say as to who will be the leader of all of us.
Well, from this guy who lives in bumfuck the middle of nowhere to you, Mr. Wannabe Urbanite, I want to say thank you for striking such a conciliatory tone after talking down to me for over 2 minutes, you fucking idiot.
To me, that is the essence of fairness. You could not design a fairer system than one person, one vote. The Electoral College should be abolished. I've yet to hear a single compelling argument why not.
Maybe you should clean out your ears then, TJ, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who has offered a couple of reasons why we should keep it. Not to mention I have not heard a single good reason out of you why we should abolish it. The only thing I've heard out of you is that apparently you didn't like the results, and so on that reason alone we should get rid of it. To which I say, no dice.
Let's do it. Let's call for this. Let's not attack President Trump. Let's petition him to lead the charge. Sure, he probably lost the popular vote, but that doesn't mean he can't be instrumental in changing the system.
You are more than welcome to try, TJ, but in my estimation, I don't think Trump really cares too much about this issue. He may have said some things about it in the past, probably because he wasn't particularly fond of how it was shaping up for him. He thought it might have interfered with his ability to get the Republican nomination, but that's probably the extent to how much he thought about it. And to be clear, just as you were saying, fuck Hillary Clinton and all that good stuff, I will say up front that I was not an enthusiastic Trump supporter. If you look at my videos from last year during the Republican primary, he was one of my last choices. As a matter of fact, I didn't even consider him a choice. But there are far more pressing matters than the Electoral College, and that's what Trump is going to be focused on. But hey, it's your time to waste, and you've been wasting it for as long as I've known of you.
Sure, he probably lost the popular vote, but that doesn't mean he can't be instrumental in changing the system. That he can't be an advocate of change, an instrument of change. The man is our president. And I think we'll get a lot further by treating him like the leader that we have expectations of than rather than just trying to tear him down so that we can, I don't know, feel good about ourselves or feel righteous and vindicated. Fuck that. Set those stupid emotions aside. Look at the fucking reality of the situation. Trump is president. Yes. The system is fucked. Yes.
Yes, Trump is president. No, the system is not fucked. You have given zero reasons why we should even consider the current system to be screwed up, other than that you, TJ, you did not like the results. And I would just like to add that you will take note, those of you that are watching this, if you go to the original video, that he has a larger number of dislikes than normal. This is probably not due to the fact that he is advocating getting rid of the Electoral College and a contingent of his dumbass audience is actually smarter than they appear to be. No, it's more likely because he's saying Trump is our president, quit bitching about it, and get over it. TJ is a dyed-in-the-wool progressive. He has said nothing but that the entire time that he's been on YouTube. And his audience is equally as progressive. So the ones that are thumbing this down are the ones that are having a bitch fit and rioting in the streets right now. Don't read anything else into that.
You know what? If Trump is our leader, then we should expect him to fix the fucking system. Even if he benefited from it personally, he needs to set that aside, just like we need to set aside animosity towards Trump or even animosity towards Clinton, because that's over too. All the fucking high emotions of the election cycle, that's done with. We need to fucking bury it, and we need to focus on how we can actually move forward as a fucking country, as a united fucking people. We should do what Lacey Green said in her first fucking tweet, not what she said in her second fucking tweet.
Personally, I'd prefer to avoid taking advice from Lacey Green on any subject, but hey, that's just me. But, TJ, I'm getting a little confused by this suddenly conciliar tone in what has otherwise been a directionless screed that has been doing nothing other than bitching about people out in the good old hick countryside determining elections. You know, it's kind of amazing that 20 to 23% of the United States population, probably only a fraction of that of some kind, actually show up to vote. I mean, turnout in rural voting districts is usually not 100% everywhere. So basically, this entire premise is just BS from the start. All right? Country bumpkins are not deciding things. I've yet to see a country bumpkin actually be in office. And no, for those of you retards that are going to say George W. Bush. Guy was born and raised in Connecticut, a.k.a. the opposite of country bumpkinville. The entire Bush family is dyed-in-the-wool urbanites going back at least a couple generations. Just because he moved down to Texas and adopted a fake-ass sounding Texas accent in order to become governor down there does not make him a bumpkin. He put up a really good act, but trust me, he didn't fool me, and it's pretty damn pathetic that he fooled a lot of you.
So let's start anyway by ending this electoral college. Let's create a fairer system. There's no argument against it. Let it be done. I'm the amazing atheist. Peace the fuck out.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful idea, TJ, but you know, I think I have a better one. Instead of abolishing the Electoral College, why don't we abolish you? I haven't heard a single good reason against it, and personally, I think we have nothing to lose except for maybe a few shit-stained bananas. This is Hell's Unicorn. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, fuck you, TJ.